Hey homeschoolers, have you discovered that when mama ain't happy, it's extra hard to be gracious to our kids and to show them love? It takes a lot of self-control, doesn't it, to keep a calm demeanor and a gentle spirit when the toilet is overflowing, or your son has locked his sister out of the house, or your school day has gone south in the blink of an eye. So take writing as a good example. If you've been working really carefully on things like grammar and story organization or descriptive details, it can be really, really frustrating to edit a paper that's just loaded with errors. You think, oh my gosh, we've been working on this for so long. It's really easy to whip out the red pen and start circling and crossing out, and you're taking out your frustration with whatever life, bad things that have happened, the spilled milk, you're taking it out on your kid's paper. And that's, it's normal, we do that, but how can we get out of that trap? Because really, most of us don't feel very loving or very affectionate when we're having a bad day. And especially if we're, trying to edit our kid's paper and we're having a stare down with misspelled words or misplaced punctuation or disorganized reports. So how do we put a positive spin on editing and grading when we're feeling out of sorts and miserable? I'm Kim Kautzer with Write Shop, and that's why I'm here today. I want to share some heartfelt tips for how to love your kids' writing, especially when you would much rather wad it up into a ball and throw it across the room. We've all been there, right? So today I'm going to talk about 3 major ways that you can show love for your kids' writing. It doesn't mean that you have to pretend that everything they did was wonderful and perfect. That's not what this is about, but it's how do you look for the good even when it's really hard to find it. So that's the gist of what we're going to do today. It's going to be short and sweet, but I just want to give you some tips to give you some encouragement in this area. So number 1 is to show love with words. So of course we know that there's frustration when you keep seeing the same old mistakes over and over again. It keeps our emotions at a slow boil, and before we've had time to even think about it, all of a sudden those poisonous words just pour out of our mouth. How many times do I have to tell you? And before we can call those words back, it's too late. The damage has been done. And I know we have all been there. So it's easy for me to tell you to start looking for the positive, but I'll be the first to admit that it can be really hard, because what we see is these barely legible sentences, and what we miss is that strong, wonderful verb that he chose. Or what we see are all these misplaced apostrophes and the crazy, erasures and the holes in the paper, and what we miss is that wonderful idea or a word that he struggled over for ages, and it's suddenly spelled correctly. We don't see that because we're so caught up in all the minutiae of the little mistakes. So that's the first thing, is just, give praise. No matter how bad the writing, no matter how many errors, there's always something good. There's always something to praise. We only have to look for it, even if it's hidden between the lines. So maybe you're just seeing lots of general mistakes. Maybe it's not a great story or report. Maybe there's facts missing. The punctuation is terrible. All the mechanics are, out the window. But is there a great nugget somewhere in there? Is there a good idea that you can point to and say, hey, this is a great idea? Or maybe appreciating how hard your child worked on that assignment, even though there are going to be things that need to be fixed and corrected. And actually, that's what the editing process is for. The first draft is not your child's best effort. It's their idea generating draft, where they've taken everything they've been brainstorming about and trying to make some semblance of it when they do their first draft. So you're just, at this point, even maybe looking for ways to encourage more out of them. So it's not just, this is your one and only chance. That's not what writing is about. Writing is about multiple layers of planning, organizing, drafting, editing, revising, maybe even doing another round, especially as the kids get older. So just looking for ways that you can praise their work is an amazing start. The second thing is to give your kids grace. So, when you're making comments on their paper, this isn't your chance to vent your frustration on your child. So when you evaluate, always try to do it with a measure of grace. If it means setting the paper aside and coming back to it later so that you know that you're going to be more objective in your feedback, that would be really great. So you want to, be kind in your feedback and honest, but do it in a gentle way. And your comments will be more readily received if you are using that gentle way of communicating. And then the third part of showing love with words is to give specifics. So it's really easy to say good job, well done. But that isn't really enough. It's unhelpful because it doesn't give them anything to hinge on. They don't know what good job means. Is the whole paper a good job? Are there things that they still need to fix? So you need to be more specific about it. Instead, just write a note on the paper that says, I love how you use the word splash here. What a strong verb. Or this is a really descriptive way to talk about this object or this person. Or I love how you explained this step of the process. So being more specific about that. I'm proud you remembered to indent this sentence. Celebrate the little successes in your child's writing. And then the last part of that then is just for yourself. I know for me, sometimes when I'm just off the cuff trying to think of something good to say about my kid's paper, it was not always easy to come up with the words boom like that. But if you keep a little list of words that you can say, a collection of comments that you know are going to be used, things like, this is a strong word choice, or I love that you've remembered to capitalize all your sentences. Whatever it is, if you just have a list of about 10 things that you can say that are meaningful and positive, that's going to be great. And then when your own well runs dry, you'll be able to think of things because you've got this little list to refer to. So we're showing love with words. Now we're going to show love with colors. Who doesn't love color? I love color. So when correcting a paper, it's easy to zero in on all the mistakes, right? Instead, you can show love by looking for things your kids did well. So start with a highlighter pen. You can have an assortment of colorful highlighters and use them for different ways. Like you might want to use it to circle a word that your child spelled correctly. Or maybe you want to highlight an entire sentence where it's capitalized, it's punctuated correctly at the end. If there was a capital letter like a proper noun in the middle of the word of the sentence, like Wednesday, they capitalized Wednesday. So all their capitalization and ending punctuation is correct. Boom, we highlight that. That means good job, well done, but for a specific reason. So it's not just good job, but hey, you remembered this, and this. I'm super proud of you. The second thing is when you're talking about loving your child's writing with color is ditch the red. So the color red, we often associate it with anger anyway, but some children have a negative association with the red pen marks. It could be that they've come out of the public system, they're homeschooling, and the idea of red pen marks on their paper always conjures up this negative emotional feeling. Even if the same pen is writing positive words, they still believe they're being graded or corrected more harshly. And this isn't to say you should never use a red pen, but if you have a collection of pens and you add variety, so from time to time you're using a green pen, a purple pen, a red pen, a pink pen, then it's mixing things up. And that can really help to make your kids feel like the writing is just more fun when they see the colors. Something I'm just going to throw in here because I say this now and then, and if you've not caught any of my other workshops, just when you're working on your kids' papers like this and you're doing some editing, if they're super sensitive, you can make a photocopy of the original and edit the copy. Then when you make all your marks on it, you're not damaging their work. They sometimes feel like that, especially if they wrote by hand and they pour themselves into this paper and now the paper has marks on it. So instead, edit the photocopy. So another way you can mix it up is to use different colors. You can use colored pencils, you can use highlighters, but use one word to circle spelling errors. Use another word to circle punctuation errors, or a third color to identify maybe weak or repeated words. And then another way that you can show love with colors is to use proofreading marks. So not necessarily that these are colorful to begin with, but a proofreading mark is a standardized, traditional way of making a correction. So there's a standard way of showing that a letter should be capitalized. So instead of just capitalize this letter or circling it or whatever, you underline it, and then there's 3 underlines under that. It tells the child this needs to be capitalized. So it's like a little code, and they love learning codes, don't they? So that's one way. There's a certain, like a little curly that you use when you need to delete a word. So instead of that crossing it out, got this fun little curly cue. So it's fun, but it's also practical, and it's the same kinds of marks that they would use in high school or college, or as parents when you're doing editing. So it's consistent, and they would really like that. And so as a freebie for you guys, this weekend only, there will be in our store a free download of a proofreading symbols chart, and I will put the link to it afterwards in the comments. Okay, and number 3. So we've talked about showing love with words, showing love with colors. Now we're going to talk about showing love with sticky things. All right, so we know everybody loves colorful things. Now we're going to talk about the sticky notes and the fun things that are adhesive. So you know that you can affirm with smiley faces. That's just as a no-brainer. A smiley face just says, yay, good job, you did this, well done. But you can do it with purpose, because that can go right over a word that was spelled correctly. It doesn't have to be a smiley face. It can be a little daisy. It can be whatever tiny little stickers that you have floating around. It doesn't have to be one kind or another, but it's a sign to your kids that you're identifying, recognizing what they did well, and you want to put a little sticker on it. That's awesome. So you can use it to brighten a paper, make them feel better about their writing. It's just another way to point out good work. When you notice that they've made some effort, they made a good word choice or whatever, that's the time to put that little sticker there. And later when your child looks at the corrected paper and sees 3 or 4 of these fun stickers, they're going to know right away that you notice their efforts, because they don't want you to just be looking for the things they did wrong. And this is a way that you can say, hey, I'm watching you. I'm seeing what you're doing. You're making progress here, and I want to bless that. So another kind of sticker is arrow Post-its. So they can look like this, just little, simple, tiny little ones. They can be big and fat like these, and they'll serve different purposes. So for instance, let's say you've got this little one and you just want to write wow word on it. And then you take that off and you point the arrow toward that super duper word choice that they made. So you notice that's different ways, I'm telling you, that you can identify their strong word choices. And using an arrow sticker is another one. Maybe you want to write very descriptive and point it to another place where they have used extra great adjectives, or they've used really strong verbs and nouns that make that sentence much more descriptive and concrete. These big fat ones can be used if you want to maybe make a bigger comment about a more general area. Maybe you want to say something about the whole paragraph, or maybe you want to point to the title and say something about that. So lots of different ways you can get those semi-transparent ones. You can find them at stationery stores. You can find them online. There's just, you know the drill with sticky notes. And speaking of sticky notes, we also have our regular standard issue, multiple sizes, zillions of colors, sticky notes, okay? And you can use these in many different ways. There's always room for improvement in your kids' writing, always. It doesn't matter how genius and beautiful this paper is, there's always something your child can do to improve it. Whether it's choose a stronger word, whether it's take out some of the verbiage because it's just too much. Maybe they're all great words, but there are too many of them. And so what can you do? You can use sticky notes to do this because you can make suggestions and comments without having to actually write on the paper. So again, you've got that sensitive child. Maybe you're opting not to make a photocopy of their paper, but instead you're just going to use sticky notes to make your comments and give your feedback. And then your child can choose, after making the corrections, to remove the sticky notes or leave them. It can be totally up to them. So you can say something like, hey, let's try adding one more descriptive detail here. Or I really like your title. It gives me a great clue about your story. So, you've got your sticky note you could put there. You've got your arrow you could put there. You've got your bigger arrow you could put there. You could use your colored pen, whatever, but somehow you're using these different tools that you have here. Whether it's to indicate that a punctuation mark should go there or whatever, you've got your tools, your little arsenal of colorful, pencils, crayons, markers, highlighters, stickers, and sticky notes. These are just a few ways that you can express love to your children, even when you're correcting their work. So if you have a special way that you like to encourage your kids' writing, I'd love to hear it in the comments, and I will come back and post the link to that freebie in just a second. Thanks for being here.